All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Appreciate those of you who are here in person and those of you who are joining us online. My name is Tom Wood. I'm here at Cody's request, representing all the landlords in Utah, apparently. Just to give a little background on myself, I've been a landlord for the last 35 years. I have managed everything from single family homes up to big 500 unit apartment communities. I've worked for small local companies and big national firms. I owned my own management company for a number of years. I'm currently the director of property management for the Overland Group, and I also do the Good Landlord training for cities throughout Utah. I own a company called the Good Landlord. Cody came to one of my classes a while back, and he reached out to me a little while ago and asked if I could come and kind of give you some direction or some advice on what landlords expect from tenants. Just some further background on me, and to let you know, I'm going to be using this that you can't see online very well, but it is the Tenant Toolkit. It's prepared by the Utah Housing Coalition. I've taught this training for a number of years for Tara Rollins with the Housing Coalition. I taught it at Catholic Community Services in the Road Home, so I'm very familiar with the tenant aspect of this. And for any of you who've been to my trainings or know anything about me, I try and be as absolutely fair as I possibly can to both sides. I understand that this is a partnership and not a dictatorship. It's not do as the landlord says or else. It's let's work together. And that's why I like to come to these things. That's why I do trainings for the Housing Coalition, because I believe honestly that the best relationship you can have is a positive, open relationship between a landlord and a tenant. And without that, we're all going to struggle. I will let you know that I am up against a hard deadline at 3 o'clock. I need to leave. I need to be in Kaysville at 3:30. And while it should only take me 17 and a half minutes to get there, it could be snowing again for all I know. So normally I'm happy to stay at the end of one of these presentations and answer any questions that didn't come up during the class. I'm not going to have that opportunity today, but Cody has my contact information. So if you have any questions today or at any time in the future, please reach out, call me, email me, and just say, hey, I'm in this situation. What can I do or what should I do? I will remind people, as I did Cody earlier, I am not an attorney. I will not give you legal advice. I will simply give you 35 years of being a landlord practical advice, although I do have a pretty good knowledge of Utah law, and we'll touch on that just a little bit in a minute. But one of the other things I want to suggest is if you have a question, just it's burning in you and I've got to have an answer to this, ask it at any point. Raise your hand or notify us online. And ask away. If you're here in person, please ask away because this is your opportunity to do that. So without any questions, I'm just going to go ahead and jump into this a little bit. And if you've got this Renter's Toolkit, you can follow along a little bit. I think there's 2 or 3 left over there. The Housing Coalition actually has a copy of it on their website, so you can pull it up there as well. First thing I want to talk about is when someone is interested in getting an apartment. Now, I'm guessing that most of you are caseworkers or work with folks. Some have vouchers, some don't. But a lot of people will come to you and just say, I need housing, help. And it may be a year before they're able to get a voucher or longer. Or they're trying to get into a project base that may be even longer. Those wait lists can be pretty extensive. I dealt with that for a number of years. I used to work for the Bremerton Housing Authority for, I did management and occupancy reviews for Utah and Nebraska project-based Section 8 housing. So those were some fun reviews. And I saw those wait lists and I felt bad for folks on those wait lists because some of them are gonna, well, I did that 4 years ago and some of those people are probably still on the wait list trying to get into some of these projects. But when you have someone coming to you and they're looking for an apartment, the first thing that I always recommend is how much. Look at what it's going to cost you. How much can you afford? because everybody wants to live at the nice new place. Everybody wants a fitness center. Everybody wants a swimming pool. But let's be practical. If you cannot afford it, aim a little lower. And maybe in a few months, maybe in a few years, you can have something like that. But be practical. If your budget is, I can afford $700, you're not moving into one of those places. And why are you wasting your time and your money even going there? It just doesn't make sense. I would love a Mercedes. Guess what? I don't go to the Mercedes dealership and walk around and ask to test drive things because I'm not walking out with a Mercedes. I'm just not. I'm going to go to the Toyota dealership because that's in my budget. That's what I can afford. So anytime someone's looking at renting an apartment, first thing is always, what can I afford? The second thing, and there were some changes to the Utah Fit Premises Act a couple of years ago in 2021, where landlords have to be a little more open and honest with folks. I really liked the rules that they implemented. One is they have to put in writing how much the rent is going to be, any fees associated with the rental, and what the utilities are that they're going to have to pay and an approximate cost for those utilities. So ask for that. Because a lot of landlords, even though they're supposed to provide it, don't provide it, or they don't know they're supposed to provide it. But if you don't ask, they usually don't go, hey, let me tell you what, and they give you a list of everything. So ask, because there are groups out there that will give you a lowball price and say, oh, yeah, your budget is $700 for an apartment. I've got a one bedroom that's $700. We can get you into that. But then they go to move in and the first month's rent payment comes in, it's $950. Oh, we have an entertainment package. It's $105 a month. And we pass through property taxes. That's another, $45 a month. Oh, did I forget to tell you you're paying for parking? Well, it's not a covered spot. Yeah, I know a guy that runs another property management company, and his mindset is no one parks on my property for free. If you want to park on my property, even just an open, uncovered spot, you're paying a minimum of $15 a month. So ask, what is my total at the end of the month when rent is due? What am I going to have to pay? What utilities are going to be mine? Are you passing through water, sewer, and trash, or does the landlord cover those? Now, it will be in the lease, has to be in the lease, but why are we waiting until we're sitting down with someone signing a lease before we find this out? We need to find that stuff out right away before we ever get into signing anything or even filling out an application. This is another fallacy that a lot of people have when they go to rent apartments. They think, oh, I'll just fill out the application and they'll tell me whether I'm approved. Why are you wasting my time and your money if you're not going to be approved? So in addition to finding out how much the rent and the payments are going to be, ask for a copy of their selection criteria. Again, in that same legislative session of 2021, the changes to the Fit Premises Act require landlords to provide a copy of their tenant selection plan. What is it going to take to move into my rental? What's the bar? You have to make 3 times the rent in monthly income, or 2.5 times, or 2 times, or 4 times, or whatever it might be. If it's 4 times the rent and you're looking at $700, I can do some quick math. It's $2,800. If I don't make $2,800, why am I filling out an application and giving you a $50, $75, or $100 application fee? Part of the reason why these rules changed and why the laws changed were because we had people looking for apartments and they would fill out 10 applications and pay a $50 application fee at every apartment and get denied at every single one. They're out of $500. They don't have a place to live and they're completely out of money. Why did you waste your money? That's my comment to them. Get the selection criteria. What's it going to take? In addition to that, if you know you're going to meet it, you look at it and go, yeah, my FICO score is 620. It's good enough. Your minimum is 600, 3 times the rent. I make that. Okay. No criminal background. Okay. Good with that. Once you feel like I'm pretty sure I can pass this bar, I can clear this hurdle, and your time to fill out the application, ask them, has anyone else applied for this rental? Oh, yeah, I've got 9 more people. Great, so you're telling me I'm number 10 in line. Why am I giving you my money? Because legally, when they give you a fee, they have no obligation to run any kind of background check on you or to give it back. So if I've collected $10, $50 fees, I made $500, and then a lot of landlords will do this. They'll look at which one they like, say, I want to take them. Now, that is not legal. It's a clear fair housing violation to pick and choose and, well, I don't want the Muslim family, or I don't want the Hispanic family. I want this guy. You can't do that, but people still do all the time. So you want to avoid that by where am I in this process? And a good landlord is going to simply say, you're first. And why would I wait for 9 more people? Because I don't make a living off application fees. I really don't. I make a living off of rent. So I want you in as quickly as possible. I want to approve you as quickly as possible. If you can meet my standards, I'm done looking. I don't care if these guys have more income or a better FICO score or a better reference from their landlord. If you're good enough, you've met my standard, not only should I take you, I'm obligated to take you. Because if I pass over you and go to someone else, oh, it's because I'm not LDS. Or, oh, it's because I'm from another country. Or fill in the blank. It doesn't matter what. Now as a landlord, I have a fair housing problem. And trust me, I don't want fair housing problems. I've been faced with fair housing problems my whole life, okay? It comes with the business. I'm currently in the middle of a lawsuit with a St. George property that the Disability Law Center filed against my company. Construction made some mistakes. Our adaptable units, they put the thermostat at 57 inches instead of 48 inches. And I have to deal with that. Hooray! Hooray for me. So it's nothing I've done. I just have to clean up the mess because it happened before I started with them. Not my fault. So before we've applied, before we've done anything, I haven't put pen to paper yet. I'm pretty darn sure that I'm going to qualify to live here. Now, I'm not positive. Something could still come up. Maybe there's something on my background I wasn't aware of, or maybe my landlord doesn't give me the reference I hoped he would give me. But I'm pretty sure I'm going to be able to qualify for this apartment. So my next step is I fill out the application. On the application, be honest. Don't lie. They will find out. I will find out. Because if you have a criminal background, I'm going to run a criminal check. Now, having a criminal background is not an automatic disqualifier. It is for certain crimes. If you have a conviction for the manufacture and distribution of illegal narcotics, see ya. I'm not going to bother with that. You're a drug dealer, go somewhere else. If you're a sex offender, I'm really sorry. I'm not trying to judge, but if I move you in, my other 3 tenants are going to move out because they all have young kids and I can't. I'm sorry. So some crimes, yeah, I'm sorry, it's not going to happen. So don't feel like, well, I'm just going to roll the dice and hope to get lucky and they won't find out or they won't do the check. They're going to do the check. That's what I tell people. Do the check. Don't trust someone. Don't look at someone and say, well, you look very trustworthy. I'm going to let you move in. She could be an axe murderer. You're not an axe murderer, are you? Okay, because I'm going to scoot way over here if you're an axe murderer. But I need to find that out. Plus, I treat everyone the same. So I'm going to run a background check on you and you and you because I treat everyone the same. I'm obligated to under fair housing laws. I have to do that. I can't pick and choose who I do this on, and my standards are the same. So be honest with what's going to show up on your background check. Don't roll the dice that maybe they won't find out. Then once you've been approved, they call you up and they say, hey, everything looks great. Now you need to get a copy of the lease. Read through the lease. If you can get a copy in advance, that's great, because the day you sit down to sign it with the landlord, it's a horrible day. It's one of the 3 worst days in your entire life, okay? It really is. Number one is if you have a death, that's the worst thing that can happen. Number two is if you have to do public speaking like this is like the worst thing you can do. Number three is moving. So this is one of the worst days of your entire life, and you're expected to digest a 70-page document. The National Apartment Association Blue Moon lease is 70 pages. Good luck with that. So most people are like, well, let me tell you what's on page 14. And they'll just skip and pick and choose, and they'll tell you what they want you to know. Which, from a landlord standpoint, I have 3 different versions of the lease process with someone. One is we go line by line, and we look at everything, and I explain everything to you so you understand it. Most people don't opt for that option because it's very long. The second option is the Reader's Digest condensed version, where I say, okay, here's the 4 or 5 things that are really important, and let's focus on those and then sign. The third option is, here, sign that, would you? Okay. And people sign that. I've had people that just, I don't want to waste my time reading through all this. Just tell me where to sign. That's the worst thing you can do because you are now legally obligated to the terms of that contract. I didn't understand that. That doesn't matter. Whether you understood it or not, you signed it saying, I understood it. And I do want to go back just a little bit to the application. I forgot about this. It has to do with evictions that we'll come to in just a minute. Falsification of anything on your application can be grounds for denial and grounds for eviction later on. So if I find out later on that you were a sex offender and you just didn't tell me and it didn't show up somewhere because you falsified your application, I can evict you for that. It's also grounds for me denying you. Sometimes I've denied people just because they lied. Well, it's not a big deal. If it wasn't a big deal, you would have been honest with me. You lied about it on here. I don't want you living here. I mean, we meet and the very first thing I tell you is a lie. Okay, I'm not trying to pick up people at a bar. I'm not. That's where you tell your lies. You know, oh yeah, I'm a famous doctor, or you know, I'm a movie star, or something like that. Lie all you want when you're picking up people in the bar, not when you're applying somewhere. So tell the folks that you're dealing with, be honest. And then read through that lease because you are legally obligated to the terms of that contract. And most people don't understand what that means. Oh yeah, I know what that means. But they really don't. They're thinking, well, yeah, it's a 12-month lease, but if I want to leave in August, I can just go. It says right here, I can give a 30-day notice. Yeah, sure, you can. And you can leave. And you are still legally obligated through the term of that contract, whether you're living there or not. And that landlord will go after you. You owe them money until either that contract expires or they reoccupy that particular rental. But a lot of folks don't understand that. Well, I'm buying a house. Well, I've got a job transfer. Unless you're in the military and you have orders, you're not getting out of that contract. It's not going to happen. Sometimes there might be a buyout clause that you can exercise. Even those are kind of rare and they are very pricey. You're going to pay through the nose to get out of a contract. Absolutely. If you have a good relationship with your landlord and you go to him and say, hey, look, I've got a job transfer. It's the middle of January. I'm moving to Tennessee. I don't really have an option. I need to leave. What can I do to minimize my problems? Well, okay, well, thank you for letting me know. When can you be out? Well, I can probably be out the 1st. Okay, can you pay through January? Yeah, I can pay January's rent. Well, I will do everything I can then to try and re-rent it. Landlords actually have an obligation to make a good faith effort to try and re-rent the apartment. And most landlords want to do that because going after someone that moved to Tennessee for money that they owe you is just a dry hole. You're not going to ever get that money. You might get a judgment against them. It might go on their credit report. You might send them to collections, but you're not going to collect much of that. I would just as soon put those people in my rearview mirror as quickly as possible and get a new renter in as fast as I can. So tell them as far in advance as you know. If you know you're moving in March, tell them today and say, you know what, I know my lease is through July, but I'm moving in March. What can we do? Well, thank you. You gave me 3.5 months to be able to re-rent it to someone. It's more helpful than 3.5 minutes. You walking up going, hey, by the way, we're out. Have a nice day. Again, understand your contract, give a proper notice, but know that you're still obligated. Okay, so we've applied, we've been approved, we've signed the lease, we read through it, we understand absolutely everything in it, and we move in. Now comes the easy part, right? Just living there, being a good resident. But people seem to still be able to screw this up pretty well. First problem, biggest problem, is they don't pay their rent. This is the number one reason for eviction in Utah. More than 90% of all evictions are for non-payment. And trust me, I've worked with Kirk Collymore for the last 26 years. Kirk is a wonderful person. He is ruthless when it comes to court. He doesn't want to hear your story. He's heard all of them, so have I. And I do feel bad. I truly do. I don't want to evict people. I go to every length I can to avoid an eviction, but I'm still not going to hesitate when I need to. And I view this a little bit as I'm the checker at Walmart and you're walking out with a 72-inch TV saying, I'll pay you next month, I promise. Trust me. No, it doesn't work that way. You're walking out with my rental that's probably 4 or 5 times as expensive as that TV is these days because they're so freaking cheap. I can't believe them. But you're expecting me to trust you based on what? You've lived here for 3 months. I don't know you at all. You were already late once and now you're late again and you're not paying and you say, trust me. I'm going to feel differently if you've been here for 5 years and you've paid on time all the time, but I don't want to evict folks. So pay your rent. You'll also run into this as a problem when people run into issues in their apartment. Well, my furnace went out and I can't get my landlord to do anything, so I'm going to not pay my rent. Worst thing you can do in Utah. Other states allow you to withhold your rent or to put it in an escrow account or pay the clerk of the court. It doesn't work that way in Utah. In Utah, if you don't pay your rent, you lose all your rights and remedies. Under the Fit Premises Act, you can't force your landlord to do anything if you haven't paid your rent. So pay your rent first. Now, I get a lot of calls from tenants because when they call the cities complaining about their landlord, the cities don't have any idea how to deal with people. So they give them my number. And my first question is always, have you paid your rent? Well, I'm not going to pay that SOB. He won't do. Then I can't help you. Pay your rent first, and then I can give you some guidance of what you need to do and the steps you need to take to get this solved. But if you don't pay your rent, you put yourself in a horrible situation. Now, if you haven't paid your rent, the landlord should serve you. It's called a 3-day pay or vacate notice, 3-day pay or quit. A lot of tenants freak out at this point and go, oh my gosh, I have an eviction notice. This is not an eviction notice. This is an I don't want to evict you notice. If I give you a notice that says pay or vacate, what do I really hope you do? Pay me. That's why it's option number 1. Please choose door number 1. That's what I want. But I get it. Sometimes you can't. Please take door number 2 and just get out. Go move back home. Do something different. But if you can't pay and you know you can't pay, move. That's your other option. Because if you don't choose door number 1 or door number 2, you are stuck by default with door number 3, which is eviction. And you don't want that. Now, there's some great programs out there. Utah Rent Relief in English and Spanish. Call them. Talk to Catholic Community Services or your bishop. Call your parents. I have 4 boys. If any of my boys called me this afternoon and said, Dad, I'm in trouble for January, can you pay my rent? I will pay their rent for 2 reasons. The first is I love my boys, and the second is I don't want any of them to move back home with me. So I am fine to help them. But as a landlord, I'm going to suggest these things to my tenants. Have you tried this? Have you called, what is it, utrentrelief.org? Suddenly, I can't. Rentrelief.utah.gov. Thank you. I knew it was all in there. It was just scrambled. Call them. Get this moving and work with your landlord on this. Technically, if the tenant is the one who has applied for the relief, the landlord can still move forward with the eviction. But if the landlord is the one who has applied for the relief, they can't move forward with the eviction. So talk to your landlord. And this goes to something Cody was saying earlier. Communicate with them. When they knock on the door, answer the freaking door. I cannot tell you how many times I have gone to a door and I knock on the door and the little peephole, you can't see through it, but you can see light through it. And it gets dark and then it gets light again and they don't answer the door. And I'm like, hello, I saw you. You know I'm here. Answer the door, answer the phone, respond to the text or the email. Because trust me, as a landlord, I don't want to evict you. I don't make money from evictions. Kirk Cullimore makes money from evictions. I don't. I lose money. So I don't want to lose you. So talk to me. Let's work this out. And if you say, hey, you know what? I'll pay you on the 15th. Most landlords are perfectly fine with that. Great. I'll see you on the 15th. And then do what you say you're going to do. Don't just throw out a number hoping to buy time. Because when the 15th comes and goes, guess what? You already got the 3-day notice. On the 15th, if I don't have a payment, I'm going to file. Because I was nice for half a month and I'm not nice anymore. Trust me, I can be a really nice guy and I can be really awful. I like the nice Tom a whole lot better than I like the awful Tom. Don't make the awful Tom come out. So pay your rent. The second thing is to follow the terms of the lease. Don't assume that exceptions are going to be made for you because I can't do that. Well, how about you just let me know? If you start the conversation that way, my answer is always going to be no, because I'm obligated under fair housing to treat everyone the same. So I can't make an exception for one person and not another. So once I've opened that Pandora's box of an exception, now everyone gets the exception. So don't expect it. When you come to me and say, well, it's only 2 days late, can't you waive the late fee? No, I can't. And I don't. I'm really sorry, I would like to, but you agreed in writing that if you were late, you would pay a late fee of 10%. What part of this are we not understanding? You agreed to it, you know what it is, you're late, and you want me to waive it. That's, I mean, I hate to quote Spider-Man, but how is that my problem? You know, it's really not. If you want to not be charged a late fee, pay your rent on time, because you agreed if I pay late, I'm going to pay a late fee. I thought about that this morning as I paid my mortgage. My mortgage is due on the 1st. I paid it this morning. Do you know why? Because it's late tomorrow. And guess what? I can't call my mortgage company and go, oh, it was only a couple minutes late. Please, 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 please don't charge me $54.23. And they're going to go, well, you know what? It was actually due on the 1st. We just don't consider it late until after the 13th or 14th or whatever today is. I can't even remember anymore. Don't expect that. So understand the terms of your contract. Don't break it. If you want your boyfriend to move in with you, please go to the landlord, make a call and say, hey, my boyfriend and I are deeply, truly, madly in love, and I want him to move in with me. Okay, great. Most landlords are perfectly fine with that. I'm fine with that as long as he's on the lease. So I'm going to run a background check on him, make sure he's not an axe murderer. Sorry, you're going to be my token axe murderer today. I'm going to make sure that he's not an axe murderer. He hasn't been evicted from 4 or 5 other places. But as long as he meets that, I don't even care how much money he makes because you qualified on your own. But now I have 2 people legally obligated to pay me money. That's better than 1. So I'm okay with that. But when you sneak your boyfriend in and I find out about it afterwards, you're going to get a comply or vacate notice that says, get rid of your boyfriend. And for some of you, that may be the out you were looking for. Oh, landlord says we got to break up. I'm really sorry. Loser, you know, okay. But you have 2 options at that point. Well, technically you have 3 options. Option number 1 is to comply and get rid of the boyfriend, or talk to the landlord and say, I'd like him to be on the lease. Okay, great. Number 2 is to vacate. Oh, but we're in love. Great. Be in love somewhere else. You don't have to live here and be in love. You can do this on the road. Get out. And you have 3 business days. Well, business days for the non-payment calendar days for the comply, although most landlords will err on the side of business days now for everything, just because they don't want to screw it up. And I'll be honest, it's difficult to evict someone for compliance issues because I have to prove it. I have to prove the boyfriend has been there. I have to prove that he's still there. That's challenging. But just comply. You said that it was just going to be you, and now there's another person. Why are you breaking the lease? Don't. So comply with the lease. If you need an emotional support animal, call your landlord. They all know this. Trust me, because as soon as you call them, they call me and say, they're asking for an ESA. What do I do? And I walk them through the process. Most big apartment communities, they have this down. They know what they can and can't do and what they're supposed to do. They have a process for it. But tell me, when I find the cat and I give you a comply or vacate notice because you have an unauthorized cat, there's also a good chance I'm going to terminate your contract. And then when you tell me, oh, it's an emotional support animal, thinking this is my escape clause, I'm happy to take your emotional support animal, but I'm still not going to renew your lease. I gave you a notice. You're moving out in 3 months. Goodbye. But it's an emotional support animal. I don't care. When I terminated your contract, it was just an unauthorized pet. You broke the rules. So know what the rules are. If the rules say no smoking, that means no smoking. Well, but it's medicinal marijuana. Well, guess what? The smoking form of marijuana is still illegal in Utah. If you have a prescription for it, you have edibles. You can't smoke pot in Utah. It's not legal. And regardless, even if you have a prescription for it, I don't allow it. It's not a reasonable accommodation to allow someone to smoke in my rental. I don't care what it is. It's just my hookah. I don't even know what's in there. My kids threw some stuff and I'm smoking that. What part of no smoking are we not clear on? So understand what's in the lease. And then I apologize, we're running up against, we wanted to leave 15 or 20 minutes for some questions. But if you get filed on, if you get that pay or vacate notice and you didn't pay or vacate, and you get a summons from the court, reach out for help. Okay, so if they call you, hopefully you know where to send them. Utah Legal Services, or maybe the Disability Law Center if you need to. But too often, tenants will get that summons from the court requiring a three days to answer, and they blow it off. And they think, oh, you can't really evict me. That'll never happen. Come on, I'm a good person. They don't evict good people. Or they just think, oh yeah, I know, I'll do that on Monday. I'll send my reply in on Monday. And Monday becomes Tuesday and then Wednesday, and suddenly they've missed the date and they're out of luck and they don't understand it. Contact an attorney if you need to. There aren't very many that represent tenants for a non-payment. I can't even think of one off the top of my head.
Or the Utah Court Self-Help Center.
The Self-Help Center, I mean, reach out for help. Try and get it. There you go. Most landlords are happy to do mediation. They still don't want to evict you. It's usually for non-payment, so let's work this out. So reach out for resources. Try and find a way out of this before it ever goes to court. If it does go to court and you're filing a response, I will tell you, for non-payment, you better have a darn good reason. And what I mean by darn good reason is, I paid it, I have a receipt from my landlord, and for some reason he didn't credit me. That's a really good reason. The judge will listen to that. I was going to pay him next Friday. The judge doesn't listen to that. They're like, yeah, that doesn't work. If you have exercised your rights under the Fit Premises Act and made some repairs in your rental, you are allowed, if you have to do that under certain circumstances, to deduct the cost from your rent. Your landlord's not probably going to buy that. They're going to go, well, I don't care that it cost you $500 to fix the furnace. I'm not going to let you deduct that from the rent. And so they will file an eviction for the unpaid $500. That, again, is a good excuse. Your Honor, here's the notifications I gave my landlord. Here's the bill I got from Lee's Heating and Air Conditioning for the repairs. I deducted it from my rent like I'm allowed to under the Fit Premises Act. That $500 is what he's evicting me for. I don't think I should be thrown out. The judge won't throw you out in those cases, but you better have your ducks in a row. You better have your documentation. Because when you walk in and say, well, I think I shouldn't, right there, you're just done. Normally in Utah, when I say normally, typically for hearings that they have, the tenants that do show up are represented by counsel 7% of the time. They're on their own if they even show up. And they're going, I mean, you've heard of bringing a knife to a gunfight. This is bringing nothing to a gunfight. You're just walking in hoping. And that's a really poor way to go to court. Completely unprepared, just hoping. And I always feel sorry for those people. I've been in court a lot of times, and I truly wish I could help you. But there's so many things that you could have done differently that could have helped avoid being in this situation. And as representatives or people that help those that are in need, my recommendation, number one, is communicate with your landlord. Any problems you have, any difficulties you're going to have paying or complying or whatever it might be, reach out to them. Your landlord will find out eventually. So tell them up front. Just say, hey, I have a boyfriend. Hey, I'm going to have trouble paying in January. Hey, whatever it is, communicate to them. Because like I mentioned, I don't people. I am not in the business of having empty apartments. I'm in the business of having full apartments. So I want you to stay. There was a reason I approved you to move in here. I want you to live here. So people kind of need to get that in their head of, my landlord really wants me here. He's not looking for ways to get rid of me. We're looking for ways to keep you rather than get rid of you. I could go for hours, literally, but I want to open it up to any questions. If there aren't questions, I didn't know if that was. Yeah, fire away. Okay. My advice is, from a landlord standpoint, is the bigger the company you're dealing with, the less flexibility they have. If you're dealing with Greystar, they have zero flexibility. They have 600,000 rentals nationwide. They're by far the biggest company, probably bigger than the next two or three combined. Greystar has zero flexibility. You go to move in there, they will simply tell you no. That is what it is, because they can't, because they have so many units and their exposure is so huge that they can't afford fair housing complaint after fair housing complaint. So they have zero flexibility. If you've got a guy who owns 12 units, he can be a lot more flexible. He can say, you know what, I'm not really on the radar. The DLC's not looking at me. HUD's not looking at me. So my risk of having a complaint because I did something nice for you that I didn't do for someone else is substantially lower. If I have 3 or fewer units, I can do whatever the heck I want to, pretty much. So if you're challenged in some way with some of your background, be it rental history, criminal history, whatever it might be, my recommendation would be go small. Go with a smaller landlord because they have more flexibility. Again, you're going to be sacrificing the fitness center and the swimming pool because those are at the Greystar properties. They're not at the 10-unit apartment building. But that's okay, because a year or two at the 10-unit apartment building, establish good credit, work out whatever your issue was, and then go move in where the pool is. Another issue that landlords will sometimes do, maybe not a behavioral clause, but they'll charge an additional deposit, or they'll require a cosigner. That's very common. Because in property management, what you're really looking at is this is risk management. How do I keep my risk low? If you have a bad credit score, well, you're a high risk for me. How do I lower that risk? I get a double deposit. My risk is now down in an acceptable range, because if you do flake on me, well, I've got $1,500 instead of $600. I can weather an eviction if I have to for non-payment. Whereas $600, I can't afford this. I can't afford not to have rent for a month. At 15, maybe I can. So that's very common as well. Hopefully that answered your question. Typically, it's not something, hopefully everyone online was able to hear that, because I'm not sure. How do we know if a property will accept Section 8 housing? They have to. Every property. Unless you have 3 or fewer units, it is illegal in Utah to discriminate on the basis of source of income. So they can't even say we don't accept housing. They all have to.
Well, that's the thing is that they do though.
They could say that if there's repairs, that they won't do the repairs.
Yes.
Well, I've called several places and they say we're not Section 8, like we don't take Section 8.
Then you have a very inexperienced person answering the phone. Bigger apartment communities should all know this. They are required to. Now, there are instances where housing will not approve them as a provider. I had this happen years ago, Lakeview Heights Apartments in Clearfield. We had a housing inspector came out and he said, yeah, I can't pass this unit because the vent cover up near the ceiling is pointing the wrong direction, because you can see up into the ductwork. So I can't approve it. And I'm like, well, if I flipped it around, will you approve it? Oh yeah. So my maintenance guy hopped on a bucket, flipped it around. Okay, approved. And as we're walking away, I turned to my maintenance guy. I'm like, I mean, it was that dumb where really you're going to fail me because the vent cover was the wrong direction. But some people will use that as an excuse so as not to accept someone who has a Section 8 voucher. Yeah. And typically you can ask as a landlord, how much is your voucher for? My voucher is for $1,300. You know, I'm really sorry, but my rent is $1,900 and I'm not going to drop my rent to $1,300 and accept your voucher. I'm not. But in that case, I would say, why is that person with a $1,300 voucher calling the guy whose rent is $1,900? Again, this is just using your resources wisely. Look, if you want someone who's maybe renting one for $1,400, they may drop it $100 and go, well, you know, yeah, I want to help you, so I'll drop it $100. We'll take your voucher. Nobody's going to go from 19 to 13. They're just not. But they might go from 14 to 13. So get in that right ballpark. But yeah, they're supposed to take it. It's extremely hard to prove. You could, if you truly feel that your fair housing rights have been violated, contact the Disability Law Center and say, this is what I think is happening. I applied here, a week went by, and then they chose someone else. They can reach out and say, you know what, we think that there's something fishy going on here, and we'd like to see your applications. Why did it take you a week to tell this person that they were denied? My knee-jerk reaction is you waited a week because you wanted someone who wasn't them, and you finally got someone who wasn't them. So now I have someone, I'm going to reject you. Now I have another person. That's what pops into my head immediately. How do I know there were 8 other people? I don't, but I can make some assumptions that maybe there were. Especially if I meet your qualifications and you still don't approve me, then the question comes, is it because of my national origin? Is it because of my gender identity? Is it because of my religion? And that's all you need to file a complaint. You can contact, you guys have it out here, you can contact the Labor Commission, file a complaint with them. But you have to have something, a little bit of substance. You can't just, I got my feelings hurt, and so I want to file a complaint. Those typically don't go very far. But if you have something I applied, and it took them a week to get back to me and tell me I was rejected, and there's a good possibility that this is happening repeatedly with that landlord. And the labor commissioner, the DLC, will go, yeah, Tom, yeah, we deal with him all the time. Thank you. And it's just another log on the fire. Anyway, I hope that helps. Yes. Yeah, you're fine.
So, if, as a case manager, we get clients, like stating, like there was small or, things like that, and they brought it to their attention that nobody
Yes.
has anything. How could we help? Like, what would be the right process to assist the client that is dealing with, like situations in the place?
Repairs and things like that that aren't being done. This is probably one of the most difficult things from a tenant standpoint. Things are breaking down and they're not being repaired because you're really limited from a tenant standpoint. What can you do? And what sort of penalties does the landlord face? Landlords face virtually no penalties for this. It shouldn't be, hey, it's in the contract. I'm going to take care of it. I'll fix things timely. But if I don't, you still have to pay your rent. You still have to be a good resident, even if I don't do this, with a few exceptions. The Fit Premises Act covers most of those things that landlords are required to do. Like they have to make sure that there's utilities to the property, that you can secure the doors and windows, that appliances are repaired timely. And there's certain guidelines. Utility issues, you have 3 days to make the repairs if the heat goes out, something like that. If the fridge goes out, they have to make the repairs within 10 days. Now, if they don't, let's say the sink is dripping and the guy doesn't come out and fix it, and it's been 2 weeks. What you can do, you can go online, Google Utah Fit Premises Act. There's a form that you fill out. You send that into your landlord and says, I've notified you of the following problem. You have not repaired it within the time guidelines under the Fit Premises Act. And so I'm choosing one of the following 2 options. Option 1 is you can repair it yourself or contract someone to make the repairs and deduct that cost from your rent. That's where I was talking about before. Deducting that cost can be problematic because the landlord may just go, you haven't paid me the right amount of rent and try and evict you. So it's a little dicey when you do that. The other option is you can terminate the contract and move out. Unfortunately, for a lot of folks, that's not really a good option. I have nowhere to go. How am I supposed to move? It's the middle of December and there's 25 feet of snow outside. I got nowhere to go. So they're not great options. I wish there were better ones. Basically, it comes down to the contract. What does it say in the contract? And I will tell you, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. Complain constantly. Text them, hey, it's Tom again. That sink is still dripping. You said you were going to be out on Monday, and I haven't seen you. When are you going to be here? Just bug them. And document the fact that you're bugging them.
One other comment on that.
Yeah.
Don't just text. Phone, email, text. Do all 3 every single day.
Well,
Yeah.
there's things like the mold, it can cause us like health problems. And if, like we're dealing with the landlord, is there a place that we can report it to, either a higher level or something?
Something like mold, you can go to the health department. You can always reach out to business licensing in any city that you have rentals in because they can terminate someone's business license and they can't have rentals anymore. Mold is a very tricky issue because from a landlord standpoint, this is how most landlords view this. When you moved in, how much mold was there? 0, because there wasn't any. And so now there's mold because you weren't clean or you run the shower 24/7. And sometimes people mistake mildew for mold and things like that. My experience is it's often tenant created. It's not very different, quite honestly, from pest control. If I move you in and there are no bed bugs and there are no roaches, and you call me and say, hey, Tom, we've been here for 6 months now and suddenly I have bed bugs and roaches, I'm looking at you. What did you bring in to change this? Because we weren't here when you moved in. Something you did or didn't do has caused this to happen. It's, to me as a landlord, it's no different than the window. You move in and the window is intact, and you call me and say, hey, Tom, the window's broken. And how's that my problem? It was, yeah, absolutely. No, you're fine. The problem is that most mold is black in color. And so they associate the 2 things together. Most black mold, technical black mold, not as green. Nothing to do with the color of the mold. And most black mold that people call about is actually mildew. Get some scrubbing bubbles and whatnot. Yeah, go ahead. Oh, no problem. Okay. and I apologize, these might be my last two questions. The first one is, if I read that correctly, someone was denied or potentially denied because they had a rental check that was going to pay their first month's rent. That to me is not necessarily source of income, that's source of payment. They're saying, I'm going to be able to pay my rent 1 month with this check I have. My question as a landlord would be, okay, after the first month, what's your source of income? Where is it coming from? Oh, well, it's coming from rental assistance. Based on what? Show me something that says you're going to be getting me this payment every month. That's the source of where that income is coming from. A one-time check, I can walk in with a check for $1,500 and go, hey, that's how I'm paying my rent every month. But where did that check come from and will it happen again? That's what the verification is. So they have to be able to prove they're going to be able to pay every month, not just the first month. Now, some landlords they'll take a check from the road home for the first 3 months in the hopes that this person is going to get a job and things like that. They can do that if they want to. As long as they are willing to do that for everyone, then they're okay. The second question, I totally spaced. Oh, how long to get approved? If you're not approved within 48 hours, something's wrong. Because credit is instant. You put it in, push a button, bam, you've got a credit score, you're done. It's the background check that may take a little longer, but even those shouldn't be more than about an hour to get back. But sometimes employer checks can be painful. Employers are not particularly cooperative, and previous landlords may be hard to get a hold of. Those are the two real holdups, but a good landlord's going to try and get that. I mean, I want you approved and in because I want to quit looking. You're the one. I want this to work, so why am I dragging it out? So if you haven't heard within 48 hours, it's probably something wrong. That's a good question, though. All right, anything else before I need to bail? Yeah, go ahead. Yes. Correct. There are emergency things that are 24 hours. There are habitability issues like water, heat, electricity that are 3 days. And then there are more contractual issues that are appliances, sink, window, something like that, which would be 10 days. All right. Yeah. If you have other questions, please feel free to email me. My email is twood@thegoodlandlord.net. twood@thegoodlandlord.net. And Cody will make this available to you as well. My phone number is 801-554-0475. And if you disagreed with anything that you heard today, call me and I'll tell you why you're wrong. Anyway, thanks for having me.
Thank you, Tom.
Kim, apologize for having to run, but